Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. And the Dons have got off to the perfect start, and so has Jimmy Thielen. 3 goals, 3 points, and a clean sheet to boot as well, Phil. So lots to be positive about as we get back to club football, and it's in full swing now that the Euros is finished as well. And lots to discuss on the show as well, Phil. We've got all the latest news because it's been an eventful week off the pitch, and we'll look back on the weekend's 3-0 win over Queen of the South and maybe kind of discuss where we go from here in the lead up to the game against East Kilbride at the weekend, and whether or not we envisage any changes, but also maybe we need to caveat some of the positivity with the level of opposition as we gear up towards the start of the season. But how have you been over the last week, Phil?
Yeah, no, it's been good. Club football's back. 2 good results, both internationally and back on the club scene. So yeah, no, it's been a bit of a jam-packed week, like you say. Try to keep on top of everything, but yeah, itching to get back to Don's weekly.
Yeah, I know, and we will try and get back to more of a live schedule. Some of the live videos we of course do on the YouTube channel, or try and get more of a regulated time on a Monday, maybe Tuesday morning release. It's just been some of the scheduling for us, our social calendars has not been aligned as much to make it consistent. But once the football season kicks off, certainly the league season will definitely be a lot more consistent. We mentioned this topic on the last show because it kind of broke whilst we were recording. The away kit was kind of teased, I think is the right word, when we recorded last week, Phil, but it was released Tuesday, 6 o'clock last week, and the Dons are paying heritage to the Wasps. Of course, Dons formerly nicknamed that, and the black and gold of previous years. And in a change from what is normally seen, and a first for Scottish football as well, the women's team and original 106 presenter Beth Wallace involved in launching the kit. The kit itself caused a lot of talk and discussion on social media. We'll focus on that. What was your thoughts when the kit came out? And there was, I know, a lot of hype and anticipation around kit launches, but what's your thought? And obviously, we're nearly a week down the line. Has it sunk in and maybe changed thoughts since then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good to see the women getting the chance to launch it. I think it kind of reiterates this sort of one club sort of ethos that we sort of have. Even including the sort of young team as well. Sort of all coming under one banner. My initial thoughts, I wasn't too keen on it. I think it was maybe just because I was expecting something a little bit different. Again,
Yeah,
I think
certainly different.
Well, it is different. I think I sort of mentioned on Twitter, I was maybe looking at it, through a lens of nostalgia. I remember the sort of old AFAB and Apex kits that we had back in the day, and they were some of like my favourite, the black and gold and black and yellow kits. So it was maybe just that they weren't quite, there in the sort of, like I said, the nostalgia viewpoint. But it has grown on me now that, I think the club did quite a fair bit of the sort of organised posting by players on Instagram. I think Esther, Leighton, Dante, McDonald all posted pretty much within the hour of each other with the away kit. And it kind of grew on me a little bit more then, probably because Angus McDonald was wearing it, which, is always a bit of a bonus. But yeah,
I mean,
I think
if they'd reiterated the content of him pouring a bottle of water over himself, wearing it like they had in Portugal, I'm sure the kit would have sold in record numbers.
easily. But yeah, no, I think now seeing that, I probably lean a little bit more to the away than the home for this season. Personally, I think a lot of the outrage was probably just because it didn't quite live up to the Northern Lights of last season, which is fair enough because that was an absolute stormer of a kit. But yeah, I mean, like I think a lot of people have said as well, I don't think we're going to be wearing it that much this season anyway. We never seem to get much use out of our away kits. But no, I think, it probably could have been slightly better on first viewing, but no, I'm quite keen on it now.
Yeah, I think the diagonal kind of like claw scraping across the kit for me kind of did a lot of distracting, and the the sponsor Texo just doesn't suit, in my opinion, doesn't suit the kit.
Yeah, the
Um,
Vespalis one looks nicer in my opinion.
yeah, miles better. Um, but for me, yeah, both kits haven't really. Certainly, the home kit's growing on me a lot more. The away kit might just be a slow grower. Rory, when he was in the club shop at the weekend, was wanting the away kit, but we settled on the home kit more so once he's not even 5 and he doesn't fit the 5 to 6 year old kits this year. So I did see a few people speak about the kits being a bit smaller fitting this year. So the fact that you were £55 just for a top for a 7 to 8 year old when you're £54 for the top, shorts and socks when you're 5 to 6 did sting a little bit. So but I was a big fan of the summer wear, so I picked out the palm tree with the Aberdeen FC logo on it. Those watching on YouTube will have seen what I was just showing off. No, I'm not wearing it, unfortunately. Saving for the holidays instead. But the colours of the kit as well. My colleague from Shetland, she messaged me and said that her and her family all wanted the kit because it's also the local village colours, the yellow and black. So they were going to be proud to be wearing it as well as having the Aberdeen kit, and they were unfortunate enough to miss out on the Northern Lights kit last season. So we're straight in, and it was well over, I think, £300 spent on getting that. So the kits, I'm sure, are doing a rare trade, and it's nice to have a little bit, I guess, of something different. But I think, yeah, you're right. It's probably not a kit that's going to be worn a lot this season.
Yeah, no, and I think, like you say, I mean, it's the way the world's going now, especially with football kits. They go up in price every single year. But like you say, I think the price point of it will probably sting quite a lot of fans. And like you say, with Rory, I mean, the fact you're £55 just for the shirt for him, you're getting it for yourself. You're £70.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's it's the way things are going. But I mean, I miss the days. Obviously you're accounting for inflation and whatnot here, but going into JJB with 40 quid and maybe coming out with, 2 football tops or, a top and a new football. So,
Well, a couple of people I seen. I think it was Stuart Fisher did the pricing of kits amongst the clubs in the top flight, and the Dons come in as the third most expensive kit. I think I can't remember what he was. He priced it on, if it was father and like one adult, one child, or one adult, two children. But yeah, the Dons came in as the third most expensive kit, which was quite damning, and a lot of people have spoken about, as you mentioned, inflation, cost of living, and certainly what's going on in the northeast with the uncertainty now. Going a little bit off topic around oil and gas, it is, but that's unfortunately the way football is going. It's becoming an expensive sport to follow. But again, Rory, when we were there, wanted all the training kit as well. So I'm going to use the Don's cash to do that for his birthday instead. But the training top that the first team were wearing at Queen of the South at the weekend, the red and white, I just can't believe the club don't currently have that for sale in retail. It's miles better than the red and orange that they keep pulling out. But unfortunately, when you've got a sponsor with an orange part in their logo, you have to meet the sponsor's needs as well. So I kind of feel that's why we've gone down that. But I was told over the weekend that the club are expecting the red and white training top to come in, that just Adidas haven't been able to supply them as yet. So I'll be patiently waiting for that. But enough about kits, because we could speak about that for a long time. Those watching will probably be enjoying is that Bohemians kit that you've got on tonight? We'll speak about on the pitch, because a player we spoke about, again, going back to last week, Dante Polvara, and the high hopes we've had for him going into this season. Unfortunately, DP8 suffered a severe hamstring tear, which will see the American midfielder miss between 14 to 16 weeks. I think that was worst case scenario. I think he was going for a scan and consultation. Not that there's anything being announced that there's going to be a reduction in that or an extension to that time frame given by the club last week. But my heart's supporting mate texted me going, I thought he died by the reaction of some of your fans, but I think the reaction was more just the hopes that we had for him going into this season. And it was an opportunity for him to be, as I said, for my 4-4-2 preview, a key player for us this season. But it looks like he'll be out until, well, he will be out until at least mid-October, possibly into November, depending how long or quickly gets back up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things. It's never nice to see a player obviously missing a big part of the season, especially when it's a player that you do think will have a key role. But I think just the rough ride he's had, up to last season, he didn't have the greatest debut, and then he was put out on loan, and people kind of thought, God, we've signed this dud from the States, and it's going to be another Hernandez situation. He'll end up in the MLS, and it'll be a waste of money. But I think seeing him grow into the sort of midfielder that we've really been crying out for at times, I think it's just unfortunate, especially for a young player as well, to see him sidelined for that period of time. And it's one of those injuries where you just hope it's not going to be recurring. I mean, how many times, do you see players that get, an issue with their hamstring and it totally derails their career? They can never get a consistent run of games. So I'm hoping, the man's built like a Greek god. So I'm hoping his body, repairs itself and comes back a bit stronger. But yeah, it is a bit of a shame. And, it's unfortunate for Jimmy as well, because any plans he might have had for that midfield are now sort of scuppered ever so slightly. I think he's, as we'll come on to discuss the midfield that played on Saturday, he's a man that's probably got plans A to Z already geared up. But, it's it's a bit unfortunate, a month into your sort of tenure to already be missing, an important player.
Yeah, and I guess I wonder how much that kind of prompted or accelerated the interest that we had in the Don's latest signings, Sievert, Helton, and Nielsen, who joined from Brann last week as well. More on him a little bit later as we discuss the debutants from the game at the weekend. We are just deliberately doing that so you keep listening to hear our thoughts on that. There is no other reason. But yeah, going back to kind of the stuff we discussed last week in terms of that interview that Dante did with Red TV, he spoke about the kind of mental side of coming to a new city, struggling, when he maybe wasn't playing as well as he'd hoped or not having that game time, and kind of dealing with that side of things, and then having to go back to America, come back across. But I think one thing that kind of strikes me from certainly the early part of this season is the togetherness of the squad and how much they're kind of there for each other. Hearing some of the players to speak when they were in Portugal about the Villa situation and adapting to dealing with different personalities that they might not used to from normal away days, because you would just share with one person, it would be that person through the whole season. But even listening to Jimmy's press conference before the Queen of the South game when he was addressing the injury, he said the fact that Dante's still going to be involved with the squad. He'll be in and around the squad, helping him and helping the squad on set piece setup. And he sees that Dante is going to have like kind of a coaching role for the next 3-4 months. And I think that's brilliant man management, something that we've been desperately missing throughout the course of last season, Peter leaving aside. For a player that's, admitted in that interview that he struggled with the mental side of things, to almost keep him involved in the squad so he still feels a part of it. He's still, involved in the day-to-day or week-to-week, setup of the squad and helping maybe positionally and whatever. That's only going to do Dante the world of good on a mental side of things, but it's going to keep him involved and keep him switched on, ready for when he is back to fitness so that he can just fit in seamlessly. But move over the Alan Russell playbook, the Dante Polvara set piece playbook coming to a pitch near you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think obviously Jimmy's clearly identified that he's a big personality in the team, and I think that's quite obvious to everybody. He's so laid back. I think he is quite a calming force to a lot of the team, which is quite good. But to use a very American term for a very American guy, he is in a way a bit of a field general. I think I think we saw last season the development in his ability to read the game had improved drastically, and I don't know if that was just from his stint at centre half over in the States at Charleston Battery, that his ability to read the game really just went up. But I think as well, it's in my head anyway, it's maybe Jimmy's way of nurturing Polvara into being a bit more of a leader. Shinny's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
Some of the other big, personalities, Nicky Devlin in his 30s, some of the ones that maybe are earmarked to be leaders within the squad, it's sort of making that next line there really. So in my head, it's maybe a way to give him that sort of, I guess, agency to feel like he can maybe speak up a bit more and coach guys through games, be that sort of vocal figure.
Yeah, and there was someone that put a comment on last week's video over on the YouTube channel where they said that on the back of the interview that he did with Red TV, he could see the potential for Dante to be a future Aberdeen captain, and whether obviously that's something as you've just kind of alluded to or shared your thoughts on that Jimmy Thielen sees as well, it remains to be seen. But I just like that style, the fact that he is going to still be in and around the squad and have a day-to-day involvement, not just a you're just into to see the physio, off you go, you can go home again, and they feel a bit detached and downbeat, I guess. So that's certainly encouraging.
It's one of those things as well, with Jimmy coming in and, try to pass on new ideas, new styles of play and whatnot. You don't want someone, like you say, being detached from that for, months at a time. At least being there, he's still picking up on, when he is back to fitness, he can slot right into that system and fill a role, as much, as football's about the work on the pitch, knowing your role and sort of, like I say, knowing systems. It's just important. Again, a very American thing, watching tape, and just really understanding the playbook,
Yeah.
is probably just as important in the sort of Jimmy Ball style as, as getting on the grass and doing ball work.
Yeah, one player though that is not out on the grass and not doing ball work, certainly not at Cormac Park or in anywhere near Aberdeen, is of course Duk. The Cape Verde striker now faces internal disciplinary action for ignoring the calls from the club to return to pre-season training. This is a tough one, because everyone will know that I'm a big fan of him. He's a big fan of the show, and he's a player that me and Callum certainly hold in quite high regard because of how much he watches the show and messages us in his spare time as well. But no one player is bigger than the club, and the way he is currently acting is absolutely dreadful for a club that's helped put him on the map a little bit, certainly with that performance in his first season under, of course, Jim Goodwin and Barry Robson. Yes, we didn't see the best of him in the second season, certainly last season. I know, he's a player that wanted to play more than he got. I know there was a podcast that put out a claim that he refused to play in a game last season under Barry Robson. It's quite a bold claim to put out. And if that proves to be substantiated and true, then again, not a good look. But I can't help but part of me feel, and I know I said this a few weeks ago on the podcast as well, for me, there's a strong part where he is being poorly advised by his agent, and his agent is saying, we'll get a move, don't worry about it. And I think you made this point as well, Phil, was the problem being that if he's listening to his agent, the bridges are being burnt with the fans. And despite him being a cult hero, he's pretty much a zero now in the eyes of a lot of fans because of the stories that have come out over the last week.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's unfortunate because he's, he, as an actual bloke, he's lovely. It's, in my opinion, rather out of character, which is what makes me think it is, as we see so often in football, an agent in an ear. It's unfortunate that this is more than likely going to be the way that his Aberdeen career ends.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's not what you should be being remembered for.
no,
I mean, even last season, we didn't see the best of him. And again, I know fans were getting frustrated with and I know we were equally getting frustrated with some of how theatrical he was at times. He was quite maybe going down where he could have been a bit stronger and stayed up. He was trying to win free kicks, penalties in certain situations where we felt he could have done a little bit better. But yeah, he's just tainted the kind of good that he did on the pitch. As you said, he's an excellent guy off the pitch. He always made time for folk that went to speak to him in town or in and around Pitodry pre-match. So yeah, I think probably agree with that sentiment about it being out of character. But again, looking at the press conference that Jimmy did, I feel he's not a manager you want to get on the wrong side of. They're very much felt that like kind of hard line, like if you mess with me and you mess with the squad, that's it. There's going to be kind of that maybe one chance saloon, to rectify any mistakes. But if you continually take the piss, then you're out the squad, or you're training with the youngsters or training on your own type thing. But it's hard to see a way back for him at this moment in time. Do you think we'll see him back in the country before the start of the Premiership season?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't think we will. Like you say, I think Jimmy's kind of got to set that marker down early as well. You don't want to be lenient now and sort of turn the blind eye a little bit and act like everything's fine, because then other players, might go, oh, this is the way that I get myself out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, just it's going back to like your earlier point as well. It's just I don't quite get it. Like, say, if it had been the form that he'd had on the first season, it'd still be inexcusable. But you could kind of go, okay, you've had a good season, your stock's high,
Mm-hmm.
could get your big move. But between performances of last season and the way that this has been handled, clubs are going to be looking at that and going, I don't know if that's the sort of player I'm really after right now. He hasn't had an abundance of goals last season. Admittedly, he didn't have much involvement, but
Mm-hmm.
and then the way that he's acting now, it's just it's just unfortunate. I mean, like I said, I feel sorry for the person I feel most sorry for here is you, because I don't know how you explain to Rory. So this will be his first heartbreak, first season ticket, and first heartbreak with a player. So
Yeah,
I
he
don't
did.
quite know how you're going to handle that.
He did want Duke on the back of his Aberdeen top when we were in the club shop, but I said he had to wait. And although his second favourite player is Angus MacDonald, so we might move on. I mean, he chooses well, although not starting again. We'll come on to that discussion point in a bit. But as well, when you speak about attitude, it's the club are being put in a really awkward position here as well, because one, we're currently paying his wages right now for a player that's not present. And the point that you make about selling that player off the back of a kind of unproductive season based on first season, what clubs are currently going to be interested on that right now? But also now seeing the attitude that he's displaying towards his current employees potentially puts off suitors right now.
Yeah,
So
I think as well, another aside to that is the squad in general, because we all know how close he is with the likes of Morris, Richardson.
Bazowin.
Yeah, it just puts those players on such an awkward footing, because I've got
Yeah.
no doubts the club's probably going over to those guys and going, look, like, have a word, figure out what's going on, because it puts all of us at a detriment here.
Yeah.
It just kind of puts them in this awkward position where, obviously he's their mate, but at the end of the day, they're being, not to, well, to be a bit of an arse to Duke here, they're being professional,
Yeah.
They're, I can't show up to my work and go, do you know what? I'm just going to bugger off into the sun for 4 weeks, but you're still going to pay me. And then I'll maybe move company after that 4 weeks is done, by the way. It's not really how it works, unfortunately, as much as I wish it did at times.
It's absolutely not, and it just leaves, I think, a sour taste for all fans of Duke. For the player that we know he can be. I saw someone say he's probably one of the most skillful players they've seen in an Aberdeen shirt for quite a while. And but as I said, kind of at the top of this piece, was that no one player is ever bigger than the club, and they should never feel or show that they are in that place. And unfortunately, it looks like a natural, well, it's not really a natural parting of the ways is coming, but they're will be. The problem for the club is if there isn't any offers between now and the end of August, what do we do? If there is an offer between now and the end of August, do we just take the first offer just to get him out of here? But obviously, the talk of that 50% sell on clause that Benfica retain, we're not going to be making maybe as much as we'd hoped for. I know there was that talk about Leganes being interested in him back in January, whether it was personal terms or terms with the club couldn't be agreed. Not sure on that, but could it just be a case of first bid, just take it and cut our losses almost?
Yeah, you think in a way that's probably the only compromise we've got here. Like I said, I don't really see much way back. Like I said, the bridges have, as you can see, if you've been on Twitter in the last week, the bridges have been burned really with a lot of fans, and it's kind of once it's gone with the fans, it's quite hard to bring it back. Like I say, with the sort of public fallout it has been, it's going to be very tough. But like you say, I mean, Burrows and Cormac have been very stern on deals have to work for the club. And, admittedly, this is a exceptional circumstance with what's going on. But, you don't want to cave off the bat and kind of show, they'll be lowballed for a player right away, especially, with, as we'll discuss later on, the potential, big bids that might be coming in for a certain striker who's, still been training with the club. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think, Cormac and Burrows have to be as, business savvy, whilst also being, I guess, as diplomatic as they can be about the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I totally agree on that. But we will move on to the footballing matters instead of discussing things off the pitch. And we'll look at the weekend's win over Queen of the South as the Dons got their Premier Sports Cup campaign underway in Palmerston. And in a change from normal proceedings, Phil, you're going to take the lead on the next segment because you've been doing the preparation for this episode.
I know it feels very big. It feels very, the apprentice becoming the master here. But yeah,
just preparing you for October when I go on a week's holiday.
Well, I'm planning a long weekend in October as well, so you never know.
We'll make sure we don't clash.
I know. We'll make sure the social calendar is more aligned this time. But yeah, no, like you say, it's a good start for the Dons. So in my efforts to take over from you, I sort of came up with several what I thought were talking points. People will probably disagree, perhaps, but yeah, the first one I'd got down, which I think was the obvious one, was no Miovski. No problem. Obviously, Esther starting, which I don't think many people were probably surprised at. At least I wasn't too surprised anyway, just with obviously the rumours going around. But did he fill the Miovski boots? I think absolutely. 2 goals for him. Like we said in previous podcasts, perhaps a player that really needs confidence. So I was just wondering, do you think he's the sort of player that's up for filling Miovski's boots, or would you still maybe like to see another 9 come in should Miovski be away?
I saw someone say that Esther Sokler was the coiled spring waiting to be released, and obviously fill that gap Miovski was holding down last season with all his goals. I still have reservations that he is going to offer us as many goals as Bojan Miovski. I don't think he's that rounded striker that probably Bojan wasn't when he first came into the side as well. And for those, again, that have read TV and watched the interview with him and Ruby, I'm sure he said he was targeting 15 goals for the season. Well, he's already got off to a cracking start at the double. Probably should have got a hat-trick as well. But, I think this is a system and style of play that is going to suit Esther's play, because I think currently with Miovski and last season, Miovski needed to do a lot of the work getting into positions and was relying on the service. But from what I saw from the game at the weekend, I think we're going to have obviously the wingers were a lot more direct, were a lot more pass and move, and it was freeing up space for the likes of Jamie McGrath, Leighton Clarkson, obviously Graham Shinney got in on the goal scoring act as well. So I feel this team this season will have more goal contributions from throughout the team rather than a sole reliance on what it looks like to potentially be Esther Sokler. And I think that will benefit him. He'll have a little bit slightly less pressure if there is the goal contributions coming from throughout the team. My only worry is if that dries up and then everyone is looking at him if he was to go through a barren spell. But no, I wasn't surprised to see him start. I think, once Miovski wasn't involved in the Peterhead game in midweek, I think it was fairly obvious that he wasn't going to be involved. Certainly won't. I doubt he'll be involved against East Kilbride. I know that there was a story that broke this afternoon. We're recording this on Monday night that the interest in Bologna is potentially cooled as they maybe scour other targets. But I can't help but feel that's going to be one of a number of bids of interest. But on the point of Bojan Miovski, I know before we came on tonight, I'm going to flip this and reverse it to you. I saw Colin Gale tweet yourself and say, should we be looking to cash in on Bojan Miovski, just sell him if he's not playing? But I also saw on the flip of that, Scott McLennan say he'd rather Miovski was just playing despite all the interest. But can the club afford to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that kind of went back to Colin on a similar line of, like I'd said previously, the club are very stern on deals have to work for us. I can't see there being much of a chance of a new contract being signed. So, the longer we hold off, the less value we may potentially get. It's one of those things where if he's not playing and not scoring the goals, that also then just diminishes the value as well. So I can see us, probably I maybe prefer us to cash in now. We've got a bit of a track record in the past of maybe declining a bid that was quite tasty and then getting offered less, 6 months to a year down the line. So I think whilst the stock's high, I think it would make sense. And I'm a bit with you in the sense of I don't think Sokler's the answer yet. And, I know we've got to take level of opposition into account, but what I was really impressed with was his movement. Against Queen of the South, he seemed to always be in the right sort of position. He knew when to drop deep, when to sort of stay high and keep the press active. So I think, he will maybe potentially fill those boots, but there are big boots to fill. But no, I do think probably in terms of maximising the value and also, just limiting, I guess, the risk on our side of things, would be to take that sort of 8 to 10 million bid if we can get it.
Yeah, and look, I can understand the kind of reasoning behind the club not playing Miovski this weekend when there was, of course, that initial interest from Bologna, and up against, with the greatest respect, East Kilbride, probably a bunch of hammer throws this weekend in East Kilbride, that Lowland League physicality. It's again on a plastic pitch. It's probably not worth the risk. If he's still with the squad come St Johnstone, I would probably be looking for him to be involved in some capacity. Whether we still continue with Esther Sokler, because for his own personal confidence, I'm delighted that he's got a couple of goals at the weekend. I think he'll only benefit from that, and I think he'll only improve if he continues to score between now and the St Johnstone game. But to have that goal threat on the bench in Bojan Miovski, if that's the kind of way the club go in terms of not wanting to start him because they want to protect that asset, I'm not against. I think you mentioned it last week as well. He's not a player, though, that I want to kind of have getting too far in the window, because your hopes will just get to that fever pitch that he's staying and then it'd be ripped away from us at the last minute. I'd rather it just got done and dusted now.
I mean, conversely, Cormac, I've maybe just given the cards away here, but Cormac's got the chance for an unbelievable bluff. If no bids are really materialising now, and Miovski goes back into the starting lineup, that's his chance to go, I'm deadly serious when I mean deals have to work for us. And if they don't, these are still our players and they are going to play, whether, you're interested or not. And again, that's another thing that could probably actually perk clubs up and go, oh, like we actually have to put in something that's, they're going to entertain now. Like we can't just lowball it, who knows if Bologna's maybe put in £5-6 million and the club's gone, not a chance. They're going, well, we're the only club that's interested, so take it or leave it. So that's always the chance for Cormac to do some 4D chess here. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting situation regardless of how it plays out. We're maybe in the position now where we could be blessed with two pretty capable nines. And even having that sort of is the bar for Sockler to reach. If Miovski is still here and it's a sort of case of like you're going to get your chances, you've got to prove you're that guy to kind of step up in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And that competition for that place, whilst he's still here, we can only benefit from.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, and I suppose moving on to the next one, another player that maybe I was more shocked to see starting than not was Shady Mo in his redemption arc. A lot of talk pre-season about Vinny coming into a bit, like I say, another redemption arc from him where he's been highlighted for his efforts in training and one of the more creative sparks in Portugal. So I personally was rather surprised to see Morris starting, and even more surprised to not see Vinny coming off the bench at all. But do you think Jimmy's seen something there? I'm not trying to say anything, but it was me that said Jimmy just has to tell him to run to the byline and cross the ball, and by God, did Shady Mo do that on multiple occasions, and the first one was an absolute perler of a ball.
Yeah, take nothing away from the ball that set Sokler up. I still feel on the first goal, the keeper's got to do a lot better on. But again, I'm hastened to get too excited about Shaden Morris's performance from the weekend. Similarly, kind of probably with a lot of the players, because of the level of opposition. This was a Queen of the South side that has gone through a huge turnover through the summer, and a Queen of the South side that struggled for large parts of last season as well. I think on your point around Vinny, I am surprised that he didn't feature at all. Obviously, opting for Ryan Duncan, but I did read that apparently he picked up a muscle injury during the halftime warm up, and that's why Vinny didn't feature in the second half as a precaution. So I think if he doesn't feature against East Kilbride, that'll maybe tell us something about Vinny's future or injury, will remain to be seen. But I think again, for a player of Shaden Morris, for the season he had last season, again, kind of similar to Esther Sokler, this will only do Shaden's confidence the world of good. He was a player I spoke to at Player of the Year, and he said, look, he's been playing in positions he's maybe not comfortable with. He just wants to show the fans what he's capable of. I kind of felt a bit sorry for him for all the abuse that I've given him on here, over the course of last season. And I think, again, going back to what Jimmy said pre-Queen of the South, was every player is on a clean slate. He doesn't care what happened last season. He doesn't care what they did last season. He's only judging them on what he sees. So if he sees a player in Shaden Morris, or if he sees something that he can bring to the team, then I think for certainly just now, we've got to trust in the manager's judgment. And if that means playing Shaden Morris and we're getting that redemption arc, so be it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like I mentioned with Sockler as well. He seems like the type of confidence player, that if he can get a string of games where, he does have a little bit of an impact, I think it will do a world of good for him. But I did see a little bit of discussion that, be interested to hear your thoughts of, the term sort of one-trick pony. And it did seem a little bit evident in that game. His style was burn the fullback on the outside, like I say, get to the byline and try and produce something. I'd be hastened to say he's too much of a one-trick pony just now. It was working for him. Arguably should have had a penalty on the back of, again, burning him. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But maybe seeing more aspects of his game developing. I know obviously a lot of talk about his final product maybe not being the greatest, but
Mhm.
is that something you think is just going to come over time, or do you think that he is very set in his way?
I think he has to be, and I think this goes for Ryan Duncan, Vinny, any winger at the club. They can't afford to be a one trick pony because, and I think for right now that is Shaden's problem, I guess, in inverted commas, that his success is coming from slowing the play down, knocking the ball past the fullback, running past him, and then delivering a ball. And for us as fans, hoping that ball has a bit of quality on it, or there's a striker in the middle for that ball. The problem is once teams cotton on to that, they'll just know either to block the run or try and show him inside. Because as soon as he goes inside, he wants to come back outside. He needs to kind of show that maybe he's quite confident to pull the ball back in on his inside and then whip the ball in, in swinging rather than out swinging all the time. Kind of have that diversity and mix it up just to get the fullback thinking, because otherwise they just know, right, if Shaden Morris is running at me, I know I just need to get to the byline because that's
Yeah,
where he's going. So it's more a case of actually getting your opposition to think rather than him being a one trick pony at the same time. But that goes for all the wingers at the club. And I think, there definitely is a feeling amongst the support that probably a winger is a position that we need because everyone is got their doubts on Shaden Morris. They've got their doubts on Ryan Duncan, and I think the jury is still out amongst members of the support on Vinny. We saw last season what he could do at MN. People doubt whether that has got the same quality as, of course, the Scottish Premiership. But a player, hopefully with confidence, as we've seen, should benefit us. But it depends if he's now got an injury setback or not. But yeah, I think a few people will be maybe looking towards a transfer market and getting a out and out winger in there that can maybe compete with the likes of Shaden Morris and Vinny and support. And Jamie McGrath was doing a lot of the wing work at left wing. Again, you maybe want that little bit of depth in those areas.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well. I'd seen discussion of maybe trying Morris out on the left. Maybe forcing him to come in on his right foot. It's one of those things. I guess it's a bugbear for me, and I feel like I use this phrase so often. I will sound like my dad, but it's the one footballing opinion I agree with him on. Is your wingers have to be both footed. I mean, I think the problem with Morris is we've not seen enough of his left foot to know if it actually really exists. That's occasionally Duncan's problem is his right foot just seems to be non-existent at
Yeah.
times. I think that's why, you look at players like Dembele at PSG in France, he's so successful because he is so unpredictable, because he's so two-footed that
Mm-hmm.
defenders have no idea which way he's going to go. In a way, that's why Niall McGinn was so successful, because his left foot was just as good as his right,
Yeah.
that he could go either way. And I think that's something that, like you say, it'd be nice to see Morris kind of throw that into his game.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's got the sort of physical attributes to be a superb winger.
Yeah.
He's probably the quickest player in the squad. If you can just add that sort of unpredictability, and especially, again, we'll discuss it later, in a league with VAR, if he can ragdoll his defender either way, the opportunities for him to win penalties, or even just get to the byline relatively unopposed, is unbelievably high.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and I guess on the theme of surprises in the squad, the centre half partnership, obviously Gavin Malloy, new signing over from Ireland, and Rubezic in its centre half. Do you think that's going to be the way we go this season, or do you think this is just sort of Jimmy sort of trialing who may work well together?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because they started the first 45 against Peterhead, and I think other than Jimmy McGarry, the side that started that first 45 against Peterhead, obviously there was another change in the midfield. Started against Queen of the South. I just wonder how much Angus MacDonald's suspension. I know John Keeler pointed it out again in the comments on our show from last week. I wonder how much of that is maybe influencing the current decision. Um, Again, it's another manager that's opting to leave Angus out. That experience out on the bench. is there something else? I know people maybe point to his lack of pace as a potential reason as to why. But they got on fine as a pairing, in terms of a debutant in Gavin. I thought he handled himself pretty well. I know a couple of people said he still looks a bit rough around the edges, a bit raw, but I'm sure there was some nerves in there playing alongside a player that you've only played against once in Ruby, and that was only for 45 minutes. Is your first competitive match. I think if that's the way we go, that's fine. They'll continue to grow. And obviously, along with Dimitar Mitov at the weekend, both him and Gavin racking up their first Don's clean sheet. The three of them, in terms of that spine of the defense, will only continue to get used to each other, and clean sheets only breed confidence. Yes, okay, we rode our luck a couple of times at the weekend, but look, we got away with it. Nobody's going to talk about conceding when we didn't, and probably come, maybe 2 months down the line, folk will forget about the half chances that the Queens created at the weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things as well. You're getting used to, although not massively different from Ireland, a new country to live in. I don't even want to know what the language barrier is like. I don't think Ruby's going to understand a word that Gavin said, and probably vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's something to contend with. But I mean, we've got to remember. I mean, Ruby's first game at Livy, everybody thought he was this massive bomb scare. And again, it was one of those things where I think he just needed the time to adjust to the league.
Yeah.
And also, kind of maybe rein in his style of play a little bit. But no, like you say, I think it's kind of hard to read into what way he's going to go with it. I think it's a shame for Angus just because he did seem to be a bit more consistent towards the end of last season in terms of shooting up our defence. But obviously, new keeper, new centre half, new coach. It's ideas have to kind of be trialed in a way, I guess. And like I said, I don't think Angus would really be frozen out the squad by Jimmy. I think he would appreciate that sort of experienced centre half. But I suppose as well, looking at the future, you've got two young centre halves that could potentially, like you say, be the future pairing for seasons to come. But no, I suppose like for a debut, as a centre half, clean sheet, okay, maybe a little wobble here and there, but all in all, pretty solid. We have three other debuts to speak about as well. Obviously, we mentioned Mitov getting his first game in the sticks. Nielsen starting in the midfield, which was maybe a surprise so soon after signing, but obviously being sort of into the regular season, fitness wasn't going to be the issue. And then Peter Ambrose coming off the bench as well. Be interested to get sort of your thoughts on the other three debutants, obviously, a bit more on Gavin as well, if you want, and sort of try to figure out, do we need to strengthen a bit more, do you feel, after sort of seeing the first glimpses of this new look team?
Yeah, so I think we've covered Gavin off enough for a game against Queen of the South. Mitov had a couple of scary moments. There was obviously the pass out that led to Queens hitting the post, and there was a cross where he came from and wasn't maybe overly convincing, and it led to a free kick, thankfully for ourselves. But look, again, all in all, I think first game, still kept a clean sheet. It'll come. A lot of people will be viewing these games as glorified friendlies. And certainly, I think for me, a lot of this really is that, because we haven't played kind of many friendlies going into this this group stage campaign. So it's difficult to be overly critical right now, because maybe those players haven't got those mistakes that you might see in a preseason friendly out their system yet. And if we're winning games comfortably and the odd mistake comes in, as long as it doesn't cost us, we've still come away, as I said, with a clean sheet. Peter Ambrose looked lively, probably unlucky not to see the defender that clotheslined him sent off. I kind of had the same thoughts as Michael Stewart, probably the fact that it was towards the 90th minute, and the scoreline was 3-0. I think a bit of leniency from Don Robertson. Not that that should make any difference. But yeah, I think, look, there's certainly a lot of pace, and he's was one for chasing down every cause. Again, though, I still do think there's a kind of that rawness around him, but certainly intent will win the fan support over, because we want to see players chasing everything. We want to see them fighting for causes. But I guess the big one to discuss, of course, is Sivert Heltland Nielsen, the 33-year-old that signed from Brann. I think the biggest surprise, maybe to some, is the fact that he signed a 3-year deal at the age of 33. Of course, signing the current captain of the club as well. And the fact that, he was up to speed with, I think, as you said, played 9-10 games so far this season already. Probably thrown into the squad, of course, with the absence of Dante Polvara. Would he have started? Would he have been here so quickly had Dante not been injured? Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But as Civ, as Graham Shinnie kept referring to him as, he looked really composed on the ball, provided that anchor in between the defence and midfield, and actually allowed Graham Shinnie to not run around like a headless chicken. And when he was in those more advanced roles, was actually causing problems and didn't have to kind of worry about chasing back or leaving gaps that he probably was doing last season.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of one of the things maybe I wanted to ask you is sort of how important do you think Civ will be this season in allowing Shinnie, as we saw with the second goal, which was brilliantly taken, by the way, for a guy that's not, renowned for his goal scoring, although he showed it a few times over the last few months. But, how important do you think it'll be in sort of giving Shinnie that freedom to, be the late runner into the box, press high as he often does and not feel like he has to really bust a gut to get all the way back. Like you say, he was really, really composed and positionally was sound. He was always in the right sort of area to be cutting out that dangerous pass. But yeah, do you think he's, going even at 33, that's two old holding midfielders we've got there, but how important do you think he's going to be in allowing Shinnie, to not
That
take much of
freedom.
that load and yeah, have that freedom as well?
Yeah, admittedly, there will be fans, and probably a lot of it myself, have concern around the fact that you've got two aging central midfielders. And it's quite ironic that we've got someone nicknamed Civ that's coming in to look to shore up that midfield and maybe help the defence from being leaky. But I think it's an astute signing, not just because it's probably an area of the pitch a few of us probably identified as needing strengthened. Um, it's a clever signing in the fact that he's a mad bastard and he's not afraid to cause trouble and ruffle a few feathers where needed. I think was it in his last game he got sent off after 10 minutes.
Yeah, against
Um,
Norwich. Yeah.
so I think if you've got one mad bastard running around up behind the number 10 and striker, only to then be faced with another one just as you get towards the defense, is going to maybe scare a few midfields. And looking ahead to get games against the bigger teams in the leagues, your Celtics, your Rangers, your Hearts, games where that midfield battle is so crucial, to then not put all that pressure or reliance on Graham Shinnie to be that midfield disruptor and destroyer, to have two people in there to do that job can only benefit us as well.
Yeah, and I think, as well, what neither of us have mentioned is he's also got a track record of being a goal scoring free midfielder. I mean, I can't remember if it's just the one season or if there's multiple where he's been in double figures for goals. And, obviously, I think he was the penalty taker at Brann for a while.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of crackers as well from outside the box. But I suppose it again comes back to this unpredictability we can have as well, where we can rotate who's sitting deeper and who's, maybe helping that press. So no, I think he will be quite influential on that side of the ball as well as, sitting deeper to allow Shinnie to get forward. But I think, looking at going forward, sort of on Saturday, we really got our first look at what we'll be branding Jimmy Ball. And there were multiple sort of key factors to that. the passing with purpose. I found
Mhm.
that for most parts of the game, when we were sort of in the final third, every pass meant something. If it wasn't stretching the play or wasn't putting somebody in behind it, it wasn't really getting played. I thought everybody bought into the Gengen press as well. Just seeing us fly bodies forward. Look at you, I'm getting a nod of approval here. I've played football,
I'm just
Andy.
using the way you put that in, but there's definitely something that picked up on as well. The fact that it was pass and move, not pass and just stare into space and hope that someone else is moving. The off the ball movement as well as the movement with the ball was night and day from what we've seen.
Yeah, and I mean, what I was going to bring on to that was, the freedom for players to express themselves, and I think McGrath did that quite
Yeah.
well, with a lot of his tricks. But I think the player for me that I think has benefited the most from this has been Leighton Clarkson.
Hmm.
I think we really did start to see the sort of Clarkson of old,
Yeah.
the way he was spraying the ball, the way he was willing to make those little intricate passes. Admittedly, like we say, maybe not get too excited because it is Queen of the South and it's League Cup group stages, but the sort of confidence he had back in himself to try those little flicks on the edge of the box to send players through, and I just be interesting, like we spoke about last week, how his role develops under Jimmy,
Hmm.
but also how this system, how you think this system's really going to fit him.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that was one thing that kind of those two players were the players that kind of picked out from that kind of system that we've heard a lot of being spoken about. The one thing I felt for Leighton Clarkson was obviously he spoke in that Red TV interview about goal contributions and improving his goal scoring, and he'll probably be annoyed that he didn't get in on the act at the weekend. But yeah, just the way that those players were performing at the weekend. Again, it's only the first kind of time we really come up against first time that 11 stayed for a substantial amount of time against an opposition 11. So obviously we changed pretty much the whole team at half time against Peterhead. So the more minutes they get used to playing in that style can only benefit us. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting signs from the weekend, but again, caveated with the fact that it was Queen of the South. Our opposition this weekend is not going up in standard again, with the biggest respect to the East Kilbride. Probably the kind of test will be against Airdrie a week on Tuesday, and how we come up against a side that we're performing at the top end of the championship. But then, of course, the real test comes against Johnston in, I think it's 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like I say, caveating it with the opposition, um, another thing that stood out for me was the speed that the ball was getting moved at as well. I mean, how often have we been screaming for balls into a channel, or
Yeah.
that quick ball into midfield from the centre halves? And I think we saw that quite a lot, especially from Devlin, who I was quite pleased in. Was always
Mhm.
sort of looking to hit that channel. So yeah, if this is our sort of first sighting of Jimmy Ball, I'm hoping that it continues on this track. But yeah, one thing we weren't really surprised to see this early into the season was a couple of questionable calls from our friend Don Robertson. I know
Mhm.
that there's a little notes screenshot on Twitter of somebody keeping track of the bad decisions that go against us this season. So
Mhm.
I hope their iPhone's got plenty of storage, is what I'll say. But yeah, obviously no VAR in action
Yeah.
down at Palmerston. Um, another season and the same old sort of issues we're having with refereeing. Obviously, the Shady Mo penalty, the Peter Ambrose clothesline. Are we going to be in for another season where it looks like we're going to be somewhat shafted by the SFA's poor officiating once more?
Look, as Kit said, like I kind of see why the Ambrose one wasn't upgraded or wasn't given on field as a red card, but as I said, that shouldn't be an excuse as to why the penalty. It's a penalty, but again, probably I can't believe I'm defending Don Robertson here, but potentially, the pace of the play, the way, because it doesn't really look like kind of. I think Morris almost like falls onto the ball a little bit, maybe makes him a little bit hesitant. But look, I enjoy a game without VAR because it gives us these talking points to kind of analyse and then not be raging that the game's being re-refereed, as of course we've seen throughout the summer in European competition. I think, though, the only thing from the weekend without VAR, I think we don't really need to discuss too much more. It just highlights that Scottish football officiating is just shite, regardless if VAR is involved.
Yeah, and it was one of those things, I think, that really, I guess, kind of didn't really annoy me because I was kind of indifferent to it all because we were winning. But Don Robertson's one of our more established referees in the game, and the whole point is that they should really be able to officiate a game without VAR. VAR is just there as a sort of added caveat of that's there if we really need it. So yeah, I guess it was kind of a little bit. I say surprising, but nothing's really surprising the Scottish referees to see a sort of senior referee sort of getting a couple calls off the mark in the first game. But I'll put that down to ring rust, shall we say.
Yeah, well, like the players, I suppose they need to warm up just as well. But as you say, thankfully it didn't kind of come back to haunt us being in that winning position. But yeah, whoever's keeping a tally will be in for a long season.
Yeah, I mean, just like you're saying there, I mean, this is not a Darvel situation of the offside goal that was 20 yards onside.
Yeah, well, speaking of them, of course, it is a reunion with Mick Kennedy this weekend. I guess, from the weekend's win over Queen of the South, probably expect to see the same starting lineup again going into this weekend. I'm not really opposed to it. And again, it just kind of creates that unity and understanding amongst the playing squad. I just hope we absolutely pump them, mainly just to shut Mick Kennedy up.
Yeah, he's also, I think, shut down the Black Rooster near me in Edinburgh, which I'm raging about because it was a good lunchtime option. So for that reason as well, I would like a big win. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I can't see the team being too unchanged. Like I say, maybe Vinny in for Morris if the injury's not as bad. Just to sort of try out those different wing options, or maybe he'll even do Vinny instead of McGrath and try two out and out natural wingers perhaps. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that team heading out to K Park. Yeah, and like you say, I think with all due respect, East Kilbride, really it should be another, I'm hoping, comfortable win where we can kind of turn on that Jimmy Ball style and really sort of get the team used to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the only other change, obviously you've mentioned a couple, I would again, if you're looking at experimenting, but I know people will say we need to continue to treat this competition with utmost respect. Again, something that Jimmy reiterated in his pre-match conference before the Queen's game. It would be the likes of Jimmy McGarry, who obviously came on for minutes at the weekend as well. Obviously, he started that game against Peterhead because, just keep that competition, and a player that's didn't obviously have kind of the best seasons, obviously severely hampered by injury. But again, if he comes on and gets more minutes under his belt, then that's fine by me. But look, we've looked back at a lot on this episode. There was a lot to talk about from the week that's been, and there was nice to talk about things on the pitch as well. It's nice that the club football is now back, and it's now the sole focus for both of us between now and May, really. I know there's a couple of international breaks, but we're not going anywhere. We're not going to be distracted by the international football in too much. But we'll be back again next week with kind of quick turnaround next week, because of course we've got the Airdrie game in midweek. So we'll be back with a quick review of the East Kilbride game and preview of the Airdrie game. We've got an Airdrie fan coming on for that. And then we'll look ahead to the Dumbarton game as well. We might try and have to kind of put it all into one episode and do a double preview, as much as I really don't like doing that. And then, yeah, only 3 weeks at time of recording till the Premiership season comes around. So it's all coming thick and fast. But so far, so good for Jimmy Ball, as Phil's going to call it. I wonder how quickly people will get annoyed of hearing that, Phil.
Probably very quickly. I mean, like I say, the Maroney axe isn't stuck. Jimmy Ball might also not stick. And like you say, the football's coming thick and fast. My moustache, arguably not.
The beard's coming on though. It's getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. I'll keep Jason Campbell happy. But thank you very much to those who have tuned in, whether it be on audio or over on our YouTube channel. If you're a member, subscriber, or just lurker watching, remember it's free to subscribe, free to listen. So until next time, thanks very much for tuning in to Red Tinted Glasses.